A narcissist operates from a simple, brutal calculus. They believe that to be full, another must be emptied. They identify the most luminous soul in the room, the empath, and begin their work. They drain energy, twist narratives, and feed on a light they cannot generate themselves. They mistake this hollowing out for a victory, this surrender for defeat. But then, the impossible happens. Something that strikes a primal fear into the heart of every manipulator, a fear deeper than exposure, more visceral than revenge, more absolute than abandonment. The empath stops playing the game. Not with a scream, but with a silence. Not with a fight, but with a profound and unassailable peace. The fuel supply is cut off, and the narcissist is left alone in the sudden, chilling quiet of their own emptiness. Carl Jung, the pioneer of depth psychology, dedicated his life to mapping the hidden architecture of the human soul. He discovered a transformation so potent, so fundamentally alchemical, that it represents the unconscious dread of every manipulator, the moment the prey transcends the predator. He realized that when an empath reaches the sacred threshold of absolute exhaustion, a state he might call the nigredo, or the dark night of the soul, they do not shatter. They do not become a darker reflection of their tormentor. They become sovereign. They become axiomatic, a truth requiring no external proof. They become the one immutable force the narcissistic psyche can neither comprehend nor conquer. Part 1, The Alchemy of the Soul, Jung's Map of Metamorphosis. Most of the world sees empathy as a softness, a permeable boundary, a flaw to be exploited. Jung, the cartographer of the unconscious, saw it as potential energy. He understood that those who feel most deeply, who absorb the emotional currents of the world as a physical reality, are not weak. They are vessels of immense power, asleep to their own potential. His genius was in mapping their awakening not as a battle, but as a transmutation. He called it the opus, the great work of the soul, mirroring the ancient process of alchemy. Stage 1, the nigredo, the blackening, the recognition. This is the empath's rock bottom. The crushing weight of accumulated pain, not their own, but the poison of others they've unconsciously carried. It is a time of confusion, depression, and felt chaos. Yet, within this darkness lies the seed. Here, in the absolute black, the first moment of clarity emerges. This pain is not mine to carry. This is the lifting of the veil. The unconscious dynamic becomes visible, and the game is forever changed. Stage 2, the albedo, the whitening, the integration. With the veil lifted, light enters. This is not about rejecting their nature but purifying it. The empath begins the painful, essential work of shadow integration. They must confront and embrace their own suppressed anger, which becomes boundaries, their rightful rage, which becomes discernment, and their denied self-protection, which becomes strength. This is where the wounded healer archetype begins its evolution. They don't become cruel, they become complete. Stage 3, the rubedo, the reddening, the sovereignty. The final stage of the opus. The fusion of the pure spirit, albedo, with the integrated shadow creates something entirely new, the philosopher's stone of the psyche. In Jungian terms, this is individuation achieved. The empath is now fully actualized. Their empathy is no longer a reflexive reaction but a conscious, directed tool. They are compassionate by choice, not by compulsion. They are the sovereign healer, and their presence is kryptonite to manipulation. Part 2, the archetypal shift, from victim to sovereign. Jung's work reveals that this journey is not just personal, it is archetypal. The empath shifts from one primordial role to another. The eternal child, pure eternus, the pre-awakened empath, boundless in giving, naive in trust, lacking form and structure. They live in a world of potential, easily exploited. The wounded healer, Chiron, the empath who recognizes their pain and begins to understand that their deepest wound holds the key to their wisdom. They are learning, but still vulnerable. The sovereign, the king/queen archetype, the awakened state. The sovereign does not rule over others but rules their own inner kingdom. Their central quality is order, the ability to bring boundaries, discernment, and right action to the chaos of their emotional realm. They are calm, centered, and unassailable. The narcissist, a creature of inner chaos and external control, cannot compete with this ordered wholeness. Part 3, The Mechanism of Power, Enantiodromia and the Truth Detector. Jung gave us the precise term for this ultimate reversal, enantiodromia, the tendency of any psychological extreme to eventually provoke its opposite. The boundless giver becomes the conscious conserver of energy. The perpetual absorber becomes the clear, unwavering mirror. The master of sacrifice becomes the architect of mutual exchange. This transformation activates what can only be called a truth detector. Modern neuroscience hints at its basis. Hyperactive mirror neurons and insula processing become calibrated. The empath can now sense manipulation in its formative stage, feeling the subtle shift in energy before a word is spoken. Detect lies not in the words, but in the micro-expressions, the incongruence between verbal and nonverbal cues. Perceive the emotional reality beneath the polished mask, seeing the wounded child hiding behind the grandiose persona. Jung compared this to active imagination, the ability to perceive the symbolic and emotional truth that lies beneath the literal surface of reality. Once this sight is achieved, no charm, no gaslighting, no love bombing can ever blind you again. Part 4, The Final Refusal, the Nuclear Option of the Soul. Jung observed that individuation is characterized not just by what one does, but by what one consciously refuses to do. For the sovereign empath, the final refusal is their declaration of independence. It is not an act of aggression, but an act of being. It is the calm, irrevocable severing of the invisible psychic cords. They refuse to absorb what isn't theirs. They refuse to participate in narratives that diminish their light. They refuse to apologize for existing in their full, authentic power. They refuse to perform emotional labor for those who offer only exploitation in return. This refusal is nuclear because the narcissist's entire economy is built on the empath's unconscious compliance. When the empath stops supplying the guilt, the attention, the anxiety, and the reflexive forgiveness, the narcissist is faced with the terrifying void of their own making. They are rendered impotent. Part 5, The Responsibility of Power, the Warning and the Call. But Jung, ever the wise guide, issued a critical warning. With great awareness comes great responsibility. The path of the awakening empath forks. One road leads upward to integration, sovereignty, and conscious compassion, compassion that loves without enabling, helps without losing itself, and sees clearly without condemning harshly. The other road leads downward into the unintegrated shadow. This is the path of spiritual bypassing, or worse, identifying with the shadow, becoming the manipulator, wielding guilt as a weapon, using emotional insight for control instead of clarity. This is not awakening. It is becoming the very monster you sought to escape. The true sovereign understands that their power is not for retaliation but for reclamation. The collective awakening, the ripple effect, from personal sovereignty to global transformation. Carl Jung's vision was never one of solitary enlightenment. While the journey of individuation is intensely personal, its ultimate destination is profoundly collective. He did not see the individual and the community as separate entities locked in conflict, but as a symbiotic pair, the microcosm and the macrocosm. He famously stated, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Extend this principle to the awakening empath, and you begin to see the blueprint for a silent revolution. Jung believed that the individuation of the single person was the only genuine catalyst for the evolution of humanity itself. This is because the unindividuated person is merely a cog in the machine of the collective, repeating its pathologies and perpetuating its unconsciousness. But the one who becomes whole ceases to be a cog, they become a catalyst, altering the very chemistry of every system they touch. An empath who achieves sovereignty performs an act of service that far transcends their own healing. They become a living, breathing testament to a new possibility. Their transformation is not a private event but a public utility, a psychic landmark for others who are still lost in the fog. This occurs through several powerful, interconnected mechanisms, rooted in both Jungian psychology and emerging paradigms in science and systems theory. 1. The morphic field of possibility, rupturing the collective trance. The term morphic field, coined by biologist Rupert Sheldrake, proposes that there are invisible fields that shape the behavior and development of species, a kind of collective memory. While a scientific controversy, it serves as a perfect metaphor for the psychic atmosphere Jung described. Every family, every workplace, every culture has its own morphic field, a set of unspoken rules, ingrained behaviors, and emotional patterns that dictate how things are done here. In a toxic system, this field is dominated by the energy of the narcissist, the manipulator, or the collective shadow, a field of anxiety, control, blame, and repression. The pre-awakened empath, operating within this field, unconsciously reinforces it. Their compliance, their guilt, their endless giving, all of it is energy that feeds the toxic status quo. They are the keystone that holds the dysfunctional arch in place. The awakened empath does not fight the field, they change it. By their mere presence, calm, boundaried, and undeniably real, they introduce a new frequency into the environment. It's a psychological version of the 100th monkey effect. Their sovereignty creates a morphic resonance of health. They become a living question mark to the old rules. Their silent refusal to participate in drama, their calm no, their unshakable sense of self-worth, these acts are like stones dropped into the stagnant pond of the collective psyche, sending out ripples that disrupt the trance. In a family where guilt-tripping is the primary currency, one member's simple, non-reactive boundary, "I won't be speaking to you when you use that tone. I'll be in the other room if you'd like to try again," doesn't just stop one conversation, it fundamentally challenges the entire economic system of the family. It forces everyone else, however reluctantly, to confront a new reality. That the old rules can be broken. Their presence becomes a silent permission slip for others to imagine their own liberation. 2. The collapse of the scapegoat mechanism, refusing the projection. Since ancient times, human groups have maintained a fragile sense of cohesion by projecting their own unconscious shadows onto a designated scapegoat and then expelling or punishing them. This cruel but effective mechanism purges the group of its internal tension, for a time. The empath, with their heightened sensitivity and desire to heal, is the perfect candidate for this role. They naturally absorb the projected anxiety, anger, and shame of the group, becoming the problem, so that no one else has to look inward. The sovereign empath's awakening is the end of this ancient game. By integrating their own shadow, they become projection-proof. They can look at the projector and, with compassionate clarity, see the mechanism at work. They might think, this is not my shame. This is yours, and you are trying to make me carry it for you. Their refusal to absorb the projection is an act of profound spiritual and psychological justice. It leaves the projection hanging in the air, unresolved, forcing it to return to its source. This is terrifying for the collective. The toxic family or workplace can no longer maintain its false harmony. Without the empath to dump on, the underlying fractures, insecurities, and conflicts must surface. The system is forced to either confront its dysfunction and evolve or, more often, to break apart. This breakdown, while painful, is a necessary precursor to any authentic rebuilding. The empath, by simply standing firm in their own truth, becomes the unwitting agent of this necessary chaos, the chaos that precedes a higher order. 3. The archetypal shift, embodying the new myth. Jung understood that humanity is guided not by laws, but by stories and archetypes, the primordial patterns of behavior that reside in the collective unconscious. For too long, the dominant archetype in our relational dynamics has been a toxic duality, the grand manipulator, the narcissist, and the self-sacrificing victim, the unawakened empath. The sovereign empath shatters this archaic dyad. They introduce a third, transformative archetype into the collective story, the integrated sovereign. This archetype is neither predator nor prey. It is the ruler of its own inner kingdom, characterized by Order, not chaos, they bring boundaries and discernment to emotional exchanges. Conscious compassion, not self-sacrifice, their love is discerning and does not enable abuse. Authenticity, not performance, they are real, refusing to wear masks to please others. By embodying this new archetype, they make it available to the collective unconscious. They prove that the story doesn't have to end with either victory for the abuser or the destruction of the sensitive soul. There is a third way. Others who are suffering begin to see this new pattern embodied. They may not have the words for it, but they can feel it. They see that it is possible to be kind and strong, sensitive and powerful, loving and boundaried. The awakened empath becomes a walking, talking symbol of hope, making the intangible tangible and the impossible, possible. 4. The network effect, weaving a new web of consciousness. Think of society not as a hierarchy but as a vast, intricate web. Each person is a node in this web. The unawakened nodes transmit the same old signals: fear, lack, competition, and judgment. The narcissistic node broadcasts a particularly potent signal of manipulation and entitlement, which can overwhelm nearby nodes. The sovereign empath becomes a node that transmits a completely different signal: self-worth, clarity, peace, and authentic connection. And because of the law of networks, their influence is disproportionate. They don't need to convince or convert anyone. Their very existence strengthens the signal for every other node tuned to that frequency. They strengthen the network of healthy consciousness. In practical terms, this means: in a workplace, one sovereign individual can shift the culture of an entire team simply by refusing to engage in gossip, by calmly addressing conflict instead of avoiding it, and by valuing their own time and energy. This gives tacit permission for others to do the same. In a family, one healed person can break generational curses. Their ability to say, "The abuse stops with me," and to parent differently, love differently, and set boundaries differently alters the trajectory of their lineage forever. In a friendship circle, their refusal to participate in toxic dynamics can either elevate the entire group's communication or naturally cause the toxic elements to fall away, clarifying the circle. This is the true empathic revolution. It is not fought with placards and protests in the streets, though those have their place. It is fought in the quiet, steadfast commitment of individuals to own their power. It is waged in the daily choices to choose silence over screaming, choose boundary over blame, choose clarity over conflict, choose self-respect over seeking respect, choose being whole over being right. This revolution upgrades the operating system of humanity itself, one sovereign individual at a time. It replaces a system based on extraction and domination with one rooted in mutual respect and conscious connection. The awakened empath is the crucial update node in that system-wide install. Closing, the manifesto of the sovereign empath. A declaration of psychological independence. If you have ever been told you are too sensitive, if you have ever been shamed for feeling deeply, if you have ever been made to feel like your greatest gift is your greatest flaw, then let this be your manifesto. Let these words be the foundation upon which you rebuild your world, not as a servant to the needs of others, but as the sovereign of your own exquisite being. Article 1, on the nature of your gift. Your sensitivity is not a curse. It is your radar, picking up the subtle frequencies of intention and emotion that others miss. It is your compass, guiding you toward truth and away from falsehood through a felt sense that is more reliable than any logical argument. It is your non-negotiable truth, the core of your authentic self that no one else has the right to define or diminish. It is the sacred gift that allows you to navigate the unseen world, the world of energy, of spirit, of the human heart. It is your innate capacity to understand without words, to connect beyond the superficial, and to heal through the profound power of presence. Yes, this gift has been used against you. It was weaponized by those who saw its light and sought to control it or extinguish it out of their own fear. You learned to associate depth with danger, feeling with pain. But that chapter is over. The moment you stop allowing others to dictate the value of your own nature is the moment you step into your sovereignty. The weapon they tried to use against you is now being reclaimed by its rightful owner. You are learning to wield it with intention, precision, and power. Article 2, a refutation of the false narrative. You were never too much. You were a vast ocean mistaken for a puddle. You contained depths and mysteries, tides and tempests, an entire ecosystem of feeling and intuition. They tried to pour you into a thimble and then blamed you for spilling over. Your capacity is not a flaw. It is a testament to your expansive nature. You were never too intense. You were a sun, a source of immense life-giving energy, asked to power a world that then complained about your heat. You were expected to warm others but never to shine too brightly, lest you expose their shadows. Your passion is not a nuisance, it is the engine of creation and the fire of transformation. You were never weak. You were holding up the sky for others and calling it love. You mistook the crushing weight of their expectations, their dysfunction, and their emotional debt for a purpose. Your strength was so inherent, so seamlessly integrated into your being, that you didn't even recognize it as strength. You thought everyone was this strong. They are not. Your endurance was never a sign of subservience, it was a dormant power, waiting for its directive. The call to sovereign action. Now is the time to rise. But this ascent is not what you have been taught. You are not rising by becoming hard, by building walls of cynicism and callousness. You are rising by becoming whole. Wholeness means embracing every part of yourself, the gentle and the fierce, the patient and the impatient, the loving and the righteously angry. It is the integration of your full humanity, not the amputation of your sensitivity. You are not rising by shutting down, by disconnecting from your heart to protect yourself. You are rising by stepping sovereignly into your discerned power. This means your heart remains open, but it is now guarded by the wisdom of your mind and the courage of your spirit. You feel everything, but you are no longer ruled by everything you feel. You choose where your energy goes, with whom it is shared, and for what purpose. The armory of the awakened. Your empathy, now conscious, is your greatest strength. It is no longer a passive leak but an active tool. You use it to understand, to connect, to heal, and to see through illusion. You turn it inward with the same compassion you once reserved only for others, finally giving yourself the gift of your own understanding. Your boundaries, now integrated, are your unbreakable armor. They are not hostile walls but conscious declarations of self-worth. They are the clear, calm no that protects the sacred yes within you. They are the space you create around yourself where you are free to be, without explanation or apology. Your silence, now chosen, is your most powerful reply. You no longer feel compelled to defend your reality to those committed to misunderstanding it. You no longer jade, justify, argue, defend, explain. Your quiet presence speaks volumes more than any frantic argument ever could. It is in your silence that your power gathers its strength and your truth becomes most audible. The new reality. The narcissist's greatest fear has been realized. You are awake. You see the game for what it is, and you have chosen to leave the casino. Your very existence is a refutation of their entire worldview. The final refusal has begun. It is a refusal to abandon yourself ever again. It is a refusal to betray your own truth. It is a refusal to participate in your own diminishment. The old game is not just over, it is obsolete. A new, more authentic game has just begun, one based on integrity, mutual respect, and conscious connection. And you are no longer a player following rules you didn't write. You are the architect. You write the rules. The decree. Therefore, let it be declared. Speak it as a vow to yourself. Whisper it in the morning, shout it into the wind, let it be the steady drumbeat of your heart. I am sovereign in my empathy. I am the ruler of my inner kingdom. I reclaim my sensitivity as my power. I honor my depth as my guide. I choose wholeness over hardness, discernment over judgment, and authentic connection over performative belonging. I refuse to abandon myself ever again. My journey is my own, and I walk it now, awake and unafraid. From this day forward, you are not a victim of your story but the author of its next, most glorious chapter. The revolution is here. It begins and ends with you.